And we are live. Dodger, go ahead and take it away.
Cool. Welcome, everybody, to a Zcash community call. I'm Jack Gavigan. I'm the Executive Director of the Zcash Foundation. And also on the call today, we have Alex and Decentralized Dan from the Foundation. As you are no doubt aware, if you're on this call, the Zcash community will shortly be electing a new Zcash Open Major Grants committee. This is a committee of 5 people that assesses and approves grant applications that are funded from the major grants slice of the Zcash Dev Fund. And during its first year, this past year, the ZOMG committee approved over $3 million worth of grant applications and has paid out nearly $1.5 million for completed milestones. Now, the first committee's term is drawing to a close, and the election for the new committee will take place from next week until the end of December. The new committee will convene in the new year and begin assessing grant applications. The purpose of this call is to give the candidates an opportunity to introduce themselves in person to the community and to answer questions that have been posted to the Zcash community forums by the community members. On the call today, we have Wobbs, Luke Parker, aka Kayabanerv on the forums, Cody Burns, also known as Don't Panic Burns, and Aditya Bharadwaj, aka Ayad, which is my way of pronouncing their username on the forums. And there are also 3 candidates who couldn't make it today. Michael Harms, also known as Brunch Time, Hudson Jameson, aka Souptacular on the forums, who is the sole person who is running for re-election, having served for the past year on the inaugural ZOMG committee, and Jason McGee, aka a quiet investor who's unfortunately traveling today and therefore couldn't make it. So let's start off by having the candidates introduce themselves, tell us a bit about your background, why you're running for ZOMG, and why you think you would be an asset to the ZOMG committee. As ever, we have limited time, so please keep your response to less than 3 minutes, and I will start waving at you if you start running over. Let's start off with Wobbs.
Hi, everyone. I tried to update my name when I joined Zoom, but my first name is Brian. I go by Wobbs on the forums, Twitter, and Reddit. And first of all, thank you all for being here today and taking part in this discussion or listening to it on YouTube after the fact. It shows that you care about the future of Zcash, and I definitely appreciate that. I would best describe myself as a Zcash community member, supporter, and enthusiast of digital assets. I've been in this ecosystem since 2013 and once mined a variety of digital assets to include Zcash. My professional and educational background is in the computer and network security field, but I don't have a formal education in computer science or the moon math that Zcash uses. I understand basic essentials of symmetric and asymmetric cryptography and know the importance of cryptography for businesses and personal privacy. In my early mining endeavors, I realized that if this blockchain technology were ever to truly achieve mass adoption, then privacy would be a fundamental necessity. So in all of the research that I've done, I think that Zcash is best positioned to provide the privacy that this ecosystem needs. And that's why I'm here to support it. I first discovered Zcash back in 2017 or 2018. But to be honest, back then, from a usability perspective, the project was a little bit underwhelming. I realized that Zcash had the backing of some of the brightest minds and engineers in the space. And at the time, it seemed like it had the brightest future. And I didn't understand the math, but I thought it had potential. However, from the standpoint of someone that just wanted to use the technology for private online transactions, that was a little bit difficult and cumbersome. You had to get, in depth with the command line. We didn't have mobile applications to be able to process those transactions. And then Sapling came along. I participated in the Powers of Tau multi-party computation ceremony, and I thought that was really cool, a really cool concept. And then we got shielded transactions to the point that they could be used on mobile wallets. And I was super excited about that. And now we're here on the cusp of one of the biggest upgrades yet. we're getting ready to remove the trusted setup. We have a roadmap of hyper-focused on usability. We have recursive proof technology that's likely going to unlock potential for capabilities beyond just online digital cash. We have shielded assets in the works, which is really awesome. And the community seems to generally be excited about proof of stake. So I think Zcash has a bright future, and I want to be a part of it. My goal as a major grant committee member is simple. I want to fund high quality major projects or organizations that will foster healthy community growth and add value to the Zcash ecosystem. I want to see projects funded that are going to complement the exciting things that are coming up on the ECC and Zcash Foundation roadmap. And I also want to fund projects or efforts that are going to help grow our community or developers and users, community of developers and users. So I think that you all share in this excitement with me, and I hope to serve on the Major Grants Committee and support this ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's hear from Luke next.
Hi, so as already said, my name's Luke, or if you want to go by my username, I generally go by Kayaba Nerve, because some places already have Kayaba registered. Either is cool. So I'm personally a developer who's gotten into cryptography over the years. And my first real experience with Zcash was, about 9 months ago. I've obviously heard about it. You're one of the biggest places, or we at this point are one of the biggest players in the space, especially with all the scientific community behind it. Yet it's something I never personally got involved with, which was unfortunate for a couple of reasons. But when I did finally get involved, it was working on atomic swaps. There's this new atomic swap protocol released 15 months ago, I want to say, by the Monero community, and it worked for Zcash. And that was really exciting because it meant we could take this one piece of technology and we could have shielded atomic swaps where no one would know your balance. And it even had cross ecosystem abilities where if someone does a swap from Bitcoin to shielded Zcash, the shielded Zcash transaction looks identical to any other shielded Zcash transaction, but within the context of the swap, it also looks identical to a Monero transaction or any other privacy coin using this technology. So I was really excited just to not only just take science wherever it came from and use it to move everyone forward, but also shielded Zcash swaps. I thought that was pretty cool. So that's my involvement. But when I was working with that, I started talking with the developers. I started talking with in the Wizards channel. I asked a lot of questions, and I was really amazed at the PDF for the entire protocol specification, everything there, the scientific research being done. And I finally started learning about the active developments in usability, the expansions to the project, and it all just seemed professionally done, balanced. There was a lot of good things. And I didn't decide to run initially. I said, this seems great. I want to contribute to Zcash somehow, but ZOMG isn't for me. And the reason I said that is just because of how new I was. I didn't have a lot of experience. I obviously was a developer of some ability, but I didn't feel Zcash was where I was prominent enough. And then there was a specific grant which came by, and I don't want to get into too much details because it was actually one of my fellow candidates was involved, and I want to respect his running. But with it, I had a lot of opinions on the ZOMG process, and something I got really excited for was requests for proposals and bringing developer talent from all around in by saying, we have this much money. If you want to develop, you don't have to submit a grant. We're telling you what we want. All you have to do is build it. And I feel there's a lot of efficient things with market competition and just bringing in developers we can do requests for proposals. So it was that grant that made me decide to run. And then that's where I really want to focus on just getting more developers involved and targeting specific goals by alleviating some of the bureaucracy of the grant process for the applicants.
Cool, thanks for that. Let's go to Cody next.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Cody Burns. Don't panic on all of the forums and Discord and Twitter and pretty much everywhere. I'm a longtime fan and follower of Zcash since at least as far as I can remember, since Zcash was first coming out and everyone was renting GPUs so we could start mining ahead of time. So for work, I'm an enterprise architect with distributed systems. So a lot of my work is around supply chains and digital identity and solving world problems that have distributed systems that need to communicate with each other. And so blockchain's a big part of it. And zero knowledge proofs have been used throughout all of the work that I do. So everything that we do from identity to supply chain and everything that's going on in the future is going to be largely influenced by what happens over the last couple of years and moving forward to the next few years with the research and development that's gone on around this technology. And the Zcash community has been one of the key driving forces in it. And so as we look at everything that's coming down the pipeline for Zcash, and we see proof of stake and recursive snarks and everything getting more sustainable and more scalable, this is where the future of the technology is going. And I want to be part of that and help funding the projects that are looking to advance everyone forward in this space. So that's why I'm running for the position. And I'll keep mine short.
Okay, Aditya, finally.
Hey everyone, it's Addy, creator of Nighthawk. I echo the thoughts of every other candidate who has spoken till now, so I'll keep mine short. So I like to bring my passion and right people together to contribute to the Zcash community by developing user-facing applications for Zcashers to rely upon. I've worked as a software consultant with Silicon Valley startups and Fortune 500 enterprise software companies over the last decade. And I'm planning to stand for ZOMG to serve Zcash user interests and to grow Zcash adoption.
That's pretty short and sweet. Okay, let's move on to the first question. Now, these questions are from the forums. And what we've done is we've picked the ones that received the most likes on the forums. And I'm going to ask Dan to read out the questions.
All right. The first question was posted to the forum by Angst01. If ZOMG were to implement an RFP process, what would be some of your priority areas to solicit proposals on? And a follow-up to that, what is a proposal title you might like to put forward or see put forward? We'll start this one off with Eddie.
Okay, so one of the missing pieces of the Zcash ecosystem going into the interoperability portions is the missing link of Zcash with other cryptocurrencies, even though Zcash has the top in line shielded assets, right? And there have been enough discussions around, and even ECC has led the topic of using Zcash as a payment into smart contracts, either as a wrapped asset or a shielded Z2Z transaction. So RFPs around asking teams and developers to start accepting Zcash as payment in their projects. It could be a toolkit, an SDK used to pay for NFTs or other goods through Zcash. So that's one area I would like to work upon. And second is definitely the audits of our popular wallets and software, and maybe even a review of the Zcash cryptography by third parties.
Okay, let's hear from Cody next.
Right. So for me, the RFPs that I would like to see or put out would be the shielded assets that are coming are going to be a big thing. And I'd really like to see things like stable coins coming in to this ecosystem. So Zcash can really be its own DeFi system as well. So having tokens, native tokens that are pegged to currencies would be a good thing. And usability also, I guess, is the other big thing. Ethereum has MetaMask and web wallets are the future of everything in this technology. So whether it's mobile or in browser, so having a better user experience around that of something more along, I guess, the Web3 JS package is probably one of the easiest to integrate with. So having something like that for Zcash, so it's easy to improve the ecosystem.
Okay, let's hear from Luke next.
My personal passion is decentralized exchanges, and as networks become more and more interoperable, as we have everything from rollups to scale Ethereum to Lightning Network on Bitcoin to actual cross-chain projects, whether it be in-network like Polkadot or brand new projects like Cosmos, or even something like Thorchain, which recently had a grant. I really think it's pivotal for us to not only stay competitive with other cross-chain projects which are expanding by looking at shielded assets, looking at, I've heard one idea, what if we could provide ZK proofs as a service to other cryptocurrencies? I think that's fascinating. Bit out there right now. But also as exchanges are delisting certain privacy coins and regulatory scrutiny is tightening, I think it's extremely important that we do focus on bridges to other networks, whether it be RenVM, Thorchain, or even atomic swap software, as I was talking about earlier, or even something like BISC. And the only reason I'm thinking of BISC at this moment is if we do shielded assets, there's going to be a ton of people who want to buy ZUSD with Zcash. And right now, Zcash isn't looking at building a DEX into its platform. Yet, if we have atomic swaps.org, and then recently BISC did this interesting thing with colored coins, I can get into it later. But basically, decentralized exchanges and bridges to other networks, not to mention expanding the reach of Zcash as a base layer is really what's important to me. And my request for proposals would I'll go with initially, not primarily, because there's a lot of fascinating stuff here I want to work on. But initially, it would be about more ways to get on and off Zcash.
Cool. By the way, I think one of the cool things about ZOMG, its purpose really is to bring an independent viewpoint to the Zcash ecosystem. And the idea of ZK Starks as a service was just something that has never ever occurred to me. And I think it just illustrates why having different people from outside the Zcash Foundation and ACC being involved and helping push this whole project forward is so important. Finally, let's hear from Brian.
Yeah, so yeah, it's pretty hard to follow up with a lot of the other suggestions that have already been put out there. I'm definitely a fan of ZSAs and increasing usability, and also interchain support as well. One of the things that has stuck out to me for quite a while now, I'm a big fan of hardware wallets, and I know we have the Trezor support coming down the line, but I don't I've followed a little bit about why the Ledger hardware wallet support has kind of been stuck to the point that it is now, but I would really like to see an RFP go out to try to move that along. And if we need to develop something a little bit differently to work on a better piece of Ledger's hardware, then that's okay. But I would like to see more progress beyond just Trezor for hardware wallets. I think that's really important for growth of the shielded pool.
We can't hear you, Jack. You went silent there for a minute.
I'm sorry. Apologies. I think I muted myself to cough and then forgot to unmute myself. Dan, do you have the next question lined up?
Yes. Next question from the forum was posted by JRGB. What do you see as the governance role of ZOMG in a more decentralized ecosystem? And do you think ZOMG should one day be a fully independent third entity? We'll start with Luke.
I think the governance role of ZOMG wouldn't change. I mean, if we look at it now, I don't get me wrong, I understand with how it's currently set up, funds are managed by the Zcash Foundation and there's accountability accordingly. Yet theoretically, the simplest way to make it more decentralized would be make ZOMG a multi-sig specified by the chain. It would still receive the block rewards. We would still vote on who's in the multi-sig whenever we do the hard fork, and they would still be intended to pay out grant funds. I think it is possible to have a decentralized ZOMG that has the exact same role, and I think we should have a decentralized ZOMG with the exact same role. As much as I appreciate the Zcash Foundation, it still represents a point of failure. And while I'm not trying to say we should get rid of it, I do believe there's value in making ZOMG native to Zcash instead of native to the Zcash Foundation.
Let's hear from Brian next.
Yeah, so this may deflect the question a little bit, but I feel that as a committee member, my responsibility would be to uphold the intent of ZIP 1014. After some of the conversations from the last few months, I understand that the ZIP did not intend the Major Grants Committee to be an independent entity, but rather exist to fund multiple follow-on independent entities. So in that regard, I think committee members should be cautious and impartial to some of the debates that are coming up surrounding funding of new entities to avoid, and be cognizant of conflicts of interest and the appearance of bias, especially if some of these issues cross our desk as committee members. Naturally, I'm the type of person that likes to take in multiple points of view and understand things from varying angles. So, I'm open to possibilities, but I also want to remain cautious about that topic in particular.
Okay. Next up, let's hear from Adi.
So I'm part of the Cardano's Catalyst program, and there they have it open ground for anyone to submit a proposal with a few selected people to review the proposals and put it up for voting, which goes into an on-chain voting scenario. And that has been working quite fantastic on that chain up till now. So my idea for Zcash is that we may not be there yet right now, but I hope ZOMG goes completely decentralized without any connection to ZF in the future. And the governance role would be to follow the community inputs via a DAO. And ZOMG can help in creating the RFPs and attracting proposals and building a platform to host a public proposal repository, and ultimately have the job to vote to release the funding for the proposals that are voted by the DAO. So I think that could be one way of doing it in the future.
Okay, and finally, let's hear from Cody.
Yeah, so I think the grants committee's role in the ecosystem is growing that ecosystem. So this is the one place where everyone can come and drink from the fire hose if they want to build out the Zcash community and come be part of this. And this is the one-stop shop for it. You submit a grant and you can get funding. And that's the best way for me, I think, to improve the future of Zcash is to bring in other organizations. Right now there's 3, but expanding that out to everyone we give a grant to becomes a member of the community. And so everyone that comes in through the grants program is eventually either fall under working with the Zcash Foundation, or they could improve back to the Zcash core itself. So that's where I see the role of it. And I think the biggest challenge is just the banking and the organizational structure around it. So we're 5 elected people by strangers on the internet right now that get money through a magic protocol, basically. And so right now, the way that it's set up is where the Zcash Foundation controls the bank, and they're the real person that is able to distribute the money. And so it's a double-edged sword, because for people that are public people, I don't have a problem, but I don't want to have to pay taxes if for some reason all the money comes to me and I have to cash it out through Coinbase or whatever. And also having the Zcash Foundation kind of be the front, it allows pseudonymous people to run for this committee. And so you can contribute without having to, you may be in a country or region where it's crypto's illegal right now, but that doesn't change the fact that you would be great on this committee. So I think that for now, until there's some laws in place or governance around how a DAO works or how a committee elected by a blockchain works, then the Zcash Foundation will probably be in place for a while, or the model that we have now.
Yeah. One thing I would just say about the role of the ZOMG in bringing new entities in is that there is nothing to prevent someone from submitting a grant application to ZOMG to set up a new entity that could be a third entity within the Zcash ecosystem. So there is a very obvious path there for someone who believes that there should be a third entity to go ahead and get funding in order to bootstrap and get that going. But let's move on to the next question.
All right. This next question was posted to the forum by Kofefe. And the question is, would you be willing to serve on the committee for a 6-month term? And Dodger, maybe you want to provide a little of the context there before.
Yeah. So one of the issues that was raised by a number of people, including some of the members of the first committee, is that it's not necessarily a great idea to have the entire committee up for re-election at the same time. And there was the suggestion that we have staggered elections. Now we could do that by going through a process of changing ZIP 1014, but an idea that I had was for members of the new committee to draw straws after serving for 6 months, to choose 2 or 3 members who would resign, thus triggering elections to fill those seats. The rules say that people have that the term limit is 1 year. People can stand for re-election, and of course, people can resign earlier. So if that were to happen, it would mean that we would then have a staggered elections effectively going forward. So I guess what this question is asking is effectively, would you be willing to volunteer to follow this plan? And if you were to draw the short straw, resign after 6 months, bearing in mind that you could stand for re-election. And let's start off here with Addy.
Okay, so I think as long as there is considerable progress in streamlining the operations of ZOMG, and we get to a point where we are approving the funding to the top priority items for Zcash and what the users demand. And then also if there are viable candidates who are ready to serve, I think then I'm ready to limit my term to 6 months. I think a lot of conditions have to be met here because 6 months is a short time, just 12 sessions of ZOMG. And yeah, it's important to have a good process going. Otherwise, it's just like incomplete work and leaving the ecosystem,
Cody next.
Yep. Yeah, I'm definitely a fan of the rolling session. I think it's something we talk about a lot in the United States. Right now, our Supreme Court has pretty much a lifetime membership to the Supreme Court. But if that could be set with a 20-year term limit or something like that, it would be good to get turnover on the committee. But you also want to have the continuation between. So at some point, we have to decide that someone's going to get a shorter term, and then start the rolling series. So yeah, I think I'd be on board with drawing straws for this one at least, so that in the future it can be a rolling one. And it would also keep the ZCAP more engaged and used to voting, and so it doesn't become stale.
Okay, Luke.
I do think that staggering the elections is actually a beneficial idea. And obviously, yeah, if that happens, some candidates should serve shorter terms instead of longer terms. Personally, I do think that it shouldn't be 6 months, yet 8 or 9. and I'd hope to participate in the discussion around that process. Yet if the community has stated they want to stagger the elections and the ZIP amendment goes through to establish this process, be happy to listen to the community in that regards, because that's what we're intended to do. We're supposed to draw people into Zcash and grow it, and part of that means growing the community and being beholden to them.
Okay, and finally, Wobbs.
Yeah, I would definitely support this proposal. I think it's important to stagger, get our elections on a staggered approach so that we don't have a repeat situation of what we currently have with 4 inaugural members not rerunning. If I drew the short straw, or anyone that draws the short straw could definitely still run for re-election again. So there's that possibility as well. And I would consider that too.
Okay. Let's hear the next question.
All right, next question from the forum. This was posted by Winnie, the Zcash Foundation's head of communications. At the end of your time on the committee, what goals would you like to have achieved? Or phrased differently, how will you define the success or failure of the committee?
Let's start off with Wobbs again.
Yeah, so I think I would like to start by answering the last part of the question first. And how would I measure the success or failure of the committee? I think in 6 months to a year, I want to see a higher ratio of major grants committee candidates running for the available positions. And I think if we can achieve that, then it will have said something about the perception, growth, and adoption of Zcash. But how do we do this? We need to attract more developers into our ecosystem that have a soft spot for privacy. We need to have cross-pollination of developers from ecosystems that we have shared values with. And then, I see the organizations like Ethereum, Cosmos, Agoric, Thorchain. Those are all perfect examples. And then I also think that we need to do more outreach to the broader community. And I'm excited to work with the new committee on ways that we can do that to attract talent into our ecosystem. So things like hackathons, bounties, talks, etc. I also want to hold an emergency session if elected so that we can discuss and approve Kedit's plan to work towards ZSAs. I think it's, that's an important endeavor. They're an important partner to Zcash, and I want to see that get started quickly. So I think it's great that we have them in our ecosystem.
Okay, let's hear from Cody next.
For me, how would I define success or failure at the end of the committee? I think I'd like to see the ZOMG be more of a common name. Everyone says, oh, if you want funding and you're working on something with Zcash, ZOMG is the place to go, and have a pipeline of projects that are looking for funding or different stages of funding that we can or be turning over to the next group that's coming in, or on the rolling committee, we could keep the process going. And so it's, and whenever there's an election, just an overabundance, I guess, of people applying would be another sign of success. They see that this project or this experiment's working. This is funding the ecosystem, and I think that would be a good place to be.
Let's hear from Luke.
I think it's really hard to define success or failure. If you asked me to come up with my simplest way of putting it, I would actually say amount of completed milestones, because I don't want to say anything that's just quantity over quality. Yet if we actually look at just a count of completed milestones, that will say how many developers we reached out to, how many steps to progress we accomplished. And even with larger grants like UEdit, it's not counting a year-long process as one milestone, it's counting it as multiple. And because of that, it represents how much progress we've made, how many developers we've gotten involved, how many tasks have been completed to expand the ecosystem. So that would be a really simple metric, but I also really like the idea of getting all members to run again next year to determine success, because it's clever and it's true. ZOMG doesn't work unless its board members do, and if the board members don't think it's working, then it's not going to work.
Okay. Let's hear from Addy next.
So I do agree with Wobbs about the ZSAs being prioritized. Additionally, I want to work towards increasing the awareness of ZOMG and confidence building in Zcash, as Zcash users supported grants getting funded without delays to keep teams continue contributing to ZEC. So that should be one of my interests. Also, for too long, mostly existing Zcash developers have been able to contribute and extend Zcash. It is difficult for new contributors to jump in and contribute and integrate Zcash into their products. So I want to help change that and spread Zcash awareness amongst more communities and asking them to work with ZOMG.
Okay, and finally, Luke.
Sorry, did you say my name again?
If I just made a boo-boo. Sorry, who hasn't answered this question? Have I lost track of the of?
I think we all have.
Okay, apologies for that.
I was just thinking, did I miss you reading the next question, or?
This is me cut and pasting questions from the chat into our coordination document. Okay, let's. So this next question is the last one from the forums. So if you're on the Zoom call, feel free to post questions in the chat, and we'll see how many we can get to within the time. Dan, let's hear the next question.
Next question from the forum was posted by Kworks. What are your ideas to gain the attention and participation of low-income and marginal groups to use and gain access to ZEC?
And let's start off there with Cody.
First thing that comes to mind is just the onboarding, the on-ramps to get marginalized and low income into the blockchain space itself. Right now, it's the barriers to entry are a lot lower than they used to be. There's ATMs, it's easy to meet up with people, but getting, I guess, the knowledge and information out there of why Zcash, why it's important to have privacy preserving technology as you're using currency, and really getting, I guess, the education around what the blockchain is, why Bitcoin is different from Zcash, how transactions aren't private. Everything's in the open, so everything can be traced, and you can be linked back to your different wallets through chain analysis. But with something like Zcash, that's not a problem, and should be a priority and come out top of mind for everybody whenever they're thinking about how they want to use their currency and interact with other people, at least in my mind.
Okay, let's hear from Luke.
I think if we're discussing impoverished groups accessing Zcash, I think there's two separate discussions to have. There's kind of the Western level of poverty where, let's say, yeah, you have a 1-bedroom flat, you might have $10 extra a week. And I'm not trying to say $10 extra is significant. I'm saying that's what you have. You have $10 a week for snacks, whatever. But then we also can go to some countries in Asia and Africa where if you say you have $10 a week, you might be doing okay, And I think when we discuss these two levels, it's very different, because if we're discussing ATMs, that's kind of discussing what I assume would be the Western side of things, just because that's mainly where I hear about ATMs being deployed, American cities, European cities, and so on. But if we're actually discussing even $1 in fees being too much to access the protocol, just because that alone could be a decent amount of money, I think from there, we actually have to look at the technological side of things instead of the adoption side of things. We need to ask, how is Zcash going to scale? How are we going to get second layers working? How are we going to surpass Bitcoin's node software, whether it be via Zebra D, just increasing the block size more, and even are monetary fees per transaction a good idea, or should we be looking at something like spam proofs? And as part of the RFP process, I'd love to discuss both research into spam proofs instead of transaction fees, along with second layer technology.
Let's hear from Addy next.
So I've been part of the ZIP that reduced the Zcash transaction fee, so I'm very happy about that. But one of the initiative I was a part of was the White City Artist Collaboration, where I spoke with a prominent Zcasher and the brand manager of the rapper to educate the audience about how freedom and privacy is possible with Zcash. So that one initiative worked quite well, and that got so many people looking into Zcash during that phase. And so I'm totally open to ideas about education around privacy and subsequently increasing the participation of the low income and marginal groups.
Finally, on this question, let's hear from Wobbs.
Yeah, so I think this is a big challenge, and not just for Zcash, but also for the broader ecosystem as well. I think onboarding is still an issue, and I think in order to answer this question, you really need to ask, what are the reasons that these groups may want to use Zcash? Are they focused on privacy? Do we need more education? Do we need grassroots efforts to educate people about the benefits of Zcash? And then also, what is going to enable these types of groups to actually use Zcash on a daily basis? And we have things like Flexa that people can use to spend Zcash at various locations, but this kind of goes back to the onboarding question. What is going to drive somebody to use something like Zcash and Flexa versus just swiping a debit card or something like that? So I think these are important questions to ask, and do some discovery work within the committee to see how we can improve that.
Okay, so now we move on to a question from Zuko on the Zoom chat. Dan?
All right. What do you think of the white paper from the first ZOMG? And if elected, would you want to keep it and repeat it, update it, forget about white papers, or start with a clean slate and write your own white paper?
All right, so
let's start with Addy there.
Sure. So the white paper was a great starting point, I believe. It put forward all the different buckets that Zcash needs to build upon and grant open their funding to. But definitely we should update it, because we have learned a lot over the last year, and we should take inputs from the existing ZOMG members of what they see, what worked, what didn't work. So maybe a good retrospective from each ZOMG member would work to guide us. And additionally, I believe that we should bring the focus on incentivizing builders to build on Zcash and also benefit financially. So I believe in attracting these contributors who build products and earn money from the products they build. So that could be a good way to grow the Zcash adoption. I also want to make sure that the teams getting funded, they stick around and support their development and extend the features, and try to reduce the one-off contribution and like leaving Zcash community immediately. So.
Okay, let's hear from Cody next.
Yeah, so I really like the white paper. I think that we should view it more as a living document. So the high level success, what it sees as the future of Zcash, I think is still very relevant. The measures of success for the technical side and the ecosystem side still ring true, and the rest of it's kind of the guidebook of how we get there. And so I think as one of the three entities that are set out in the ecosystem, it's what we owe to the community, at least that accountability of this is where we're going, this is what we think success looks like in the future. And I think that's the least that we can do for providing back to the community of where we're going. We're receiving a tax from the miners and from the ecosystem with every block, and they need to see a return on those results. So I think this is the guiding light that we walk through. And if we do move to a rolling council, I think it'll be a good living document that we can continually update and come back to, so we know where we're at, where we're going.
Okay, let's hear from Wobbs next.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate the white paper that the inaugural committee made. I think it has a lot of great ideas for potential grants. I think we need to iterate on it, and I also think that we need to add anything that we think is complementary to our existing roadmaps. I also think we need to promote it more. These are ideas for grants that we would like to see come to the committee, and in order to achieve these goals, we need to continuously inform the ecosystem of our needs by promoting these ideas more.
And finally, let's hear from Luke.
I am not against having a white paper, but I question how many people refer to it versus more modern forms of documentation, such as a comprehensive website, not to mention the actual actions we take, the minutes we publish, and the comments we leave. So I'm not against having a white paper, and at the very least, yeah, I think we should probably update the existing one just to be clear on our stance forward. But for me personally, I would like to focus on more modern forms of documentation. And while that kind of would replace the white paper and therefore have a lot of the same content, yeah, I believe most of what the previous ZOMG set out is accurate. I think it had like bullet points of like active projects that probably needs to be updated. It has been a year, but I think most of it is accurate, and it's just about not only clarifying it and making sure we have the same goals, yet also migrating it to more accessible formats more likely to be read.
Okay. Let's move on to the next question from the chat. Dan?
Next question. What do you think is the most valuable project that ZOMG has already funded?
Let's start off with Cody this time. I'm sorry, yeah, that's from Parker.
Yeah. For me, the one I guess I'm most hopeful for is the treasurer support, the hardware wallet support. That was, I think, 6 months ago. It was funded to get shielded transactions onto the treasure wallet. So I think the hardware wallets are key, and it's nice having options. If I use Treasure, I don't have a ledger. So keeping support for things like that in the ecosystem, I think, are really valuable.
Let's hear from Wobbs next.
I was also going to say Trezor as well. I think growing the shielded pool is very important. But if I had to pick a second, we're still kind of early and haven't seen the results of it yet, but I think that the documentary that 37 Lanes is putting together on Zcash, I think community outreach and education is highly important and highly needed in our ecosystem right now. So I'm super excited about that, and I think it will be a very valuable grant, once that's completed.
Let's hear from Luke.
So I have a few candidates. Personally, my favorite is Artie, but that wasn't really a Zcash grant. That was a grant to the Tor project for network level privacy that could take Zcash a step forward. So it's linked to Zcash and it's amazing for Zcash, but it's not necessarily Zcash. And with looking at that, the next grant I had in mind, just because it was recent probably, would be actually the Cake Wallet grant, because it's going to attract a massive user base and further make Zcash accessible to a variety of users. And then I also know other wallet software, Zec Wallet, I believe it was, did Blaze Sync, where you can sync the chain in under 60 seconds. There's a lot of incredible wallet software out there. So those are probably going to be my favorite grants once we move past the network level privacy Artie is looking to offer.
Okay, and finally, let's hear from Adi.
Yeah, there are so many great grants funded, and some of them are still in progress. So I'd like to see how that plays out. But for choosing one, I'll go with Artie, as that works closer with the Rust layer that the Zebra D client can use to add privacy at the network layer. So I'm really looking forward for the development of the Zebra client.
Okay. I think the next question we have is from Adi. Adi, do you want to ask it yourself and then give your answer?
Yeah, sure. So Jason's work towards getting a separate discretionary funding budget? So that's going to be a separate question on the poll. So if we do get a budget, for example, let's say 250K for us to spend. So what would you spend this money on? That's the question.
And what's your answer, Adi?
So I would definitely like to hire a community manager of some sorts for working on outreach efforts, because I did see firsthand how different cryptocurrency projects have these dedicated community leaders who connect with their audience from various Discord channels to Telegram chats in multiple languages. And they're just like super active and without being, in a way constrained by ECC's roadmap. The ECC can have their own community manager, ZF can have their own community managers, but one to truly represent the Zcash users. So that could be one position to hire for. And then I would like to know what fun activities the existing ZOMG were planning and take notes from them to see how that can be extended.
Okay, let's hear from Cody next.
Yeah, and just echoing that, I think from what I've seen, it's just a lot of administrative work around setting up the calls, getting the grants, monitoring them. The community manager role, I think, would be good. Not just a lot of the community input, I think, that I've seen comes either from the forums or from the Discord, and it's biased more towards the Western viewpoint, America, Europe. And I think it would be good to reach out and be more established and have the grants in other regions as well. So find the other major social media platforms in Korea, Asia, just how to get more involved around the world. So it's not just, hey, this is a project that we're doing. You had to know English. You had to be on these forums. Being able to meet people where they're at, I think would be a good use of the funds.
Okay, let's hear from Wobbs next.
In my discussions on the forum about this, I said I don't have any specific goals in mind other than, wanting to wait until we have a new committee in place and actually start brainstorming with that committee, and also receive more input from the inaugural committee. I like the ideas that have been brought up by Adi. I think a community manager is a great idea. Someone on the forums brought up hackathons. Maybe the ZOMG should maybe sponsor a group to run something like that. We'd have to brainstorm on that. But I don't have any specific plans.
Okay, and Luke?
I really do think it boils down to support staff in making sure that if we need help, whether it be via community managers or via technical experts, we can, if they want to charge money, we can make sure we get in the room and get it handled. Obviously, Zcash Foundation makes itself accessible, and I'm not trying to dismiss that, but it's also important that ZOMG is able to reach out on its own to pay for infrastructure in the case of further issues. I don't want to suggest Zcash Foundation will fail. I legitimately don't mean to suggest it does, but I think it's important that ZOMG does have plans for if Zcash Foundation says, hey, we're at our limit this month, come back next month or something. And I think that's where this budget is for. It's to make sure ZOMG can decide who to call instead of being forced to rely on specific parties at this time.
Does any of the other candidates have questions that they'd like to pose to the rest of the candidate slate?
Yeah, I have one. I guess I'll go first. So last year, unfortunately, all of the members didn't make it through towards the end of the ZOMG, and halfway through there was a kind of a fire drill of finding who would be next. So would everyone be open to being the alternate if you aren't selected as one of the 5 for the ZOMG? I guess that would be the easiest way of determining who's next in line, or should there have been a special election? In mine, I think I'd rather have the alternate from the people who ran this time.
Yeah. So for context on that, one of the inaugural members of the ZOMG resigned quite early on, and it was very, very early. They resigned, pretty sure it was in January. And behind the scenes, there were conversations between the foundation and ECC, and because it was so early, we felt that it made sense to go to the next person in line. Now, the next person in line would have been DC from ECC, but unfortunately, they had taken on more responsibilities at ECC after they had just missed the cut on the election. So we ended up going to the next person in line. They have basically declined the seat. So we ended up going to the next person in line, which is how ML joined the committee. I think there is no formal process for deciding how circumstances like that are dealt with. It's not specified in ZIP 1014, and at the time we felt that it was important to move quickly in order to avoid uncertainty and delay. If I think that obviously this idea has been floated about having people draw straws and resign after 6 months in order to get this staggered elections process going. So I think it would probably depend on at what stage in the lifetime of the committee somebody actually chose to step down. But I appreciate this was a question to the candidates, so I'll shut up and I'll let any of the other candidates who want to, or any of the actual candidates who want to answer it, do so.
I would definitely make myself available if not elected and a spot opened up.
Yeah, on my front, the timing is a bit critical because I think we are well positioned now as for the Nighthawk Wallet. The developers still have the funding from the previous round on hold as they are waiting for the NU5 implementation. So I'm expecting the NU5 implementation is done in the first 6 months. And so I don't have much active development to do. That's why I have bandwidth in the first 6 months, definitely. But if I had to wait another 6 months to stand, I don't know how things are going to be from July onwards.
Can I comment next, or is there an order here?
There's no order here at this point.
Okay, just double checking. I like the idea of an alternate system in theory, but if we have 7 candidates and 5 get elected, if the 6th and 7th candidates are like really far behind, which hopefully not, I think all the candidates this year have their own advantages and are good people. I'm not trying to say I think someone's gonna be really far behind, but I think theoretically, yeah, there could be a chance where the alternate is someone who got a very minimal section of the votes. And because of that, I don't think it would represent the community to move to an alternate system. And as much as I hate to say, let's have the bureaucracy of voting yet again, especially if it's like within a month of the event happening. If it's within a month or 2, then yes, I'll go for the alternate system. But I think that's just something we have to be mindful of, though. As for if I personally would make myself available, if you told me it's within 3 months from now, I'd probably say definitely. If you come to me 11 months down the road and be like, hey, we need an alternate, who knows? It's just really hard to plan things out. And life's always changing. For all I know, 11 months from now, I'm only going to speak about my favorite pasta recipes, my new life as a chef. But assuming I don't completely leave coding, yeah, I would be very interested in serving in ZOMG at some point in the future, even if I'm not selected today.
Any more questions from any of the candidates that they'd like to raise?
This is a question I saw in chat I just really liked. So if I could kind of rebroadcast it. Zebra is the Zcash Foundation's independent, consensus-compatible implementation of a Zcash node. In pursuit of further decentralization, should ZOMG dedicate resource towards maintaining another compatible implementation, such as in Go? Why or why not? And I also have my own comments, but I'd like to let others respond before I say it, since I asked the question.
So I think the client implementation is a huge effort. A lot of work needs to be done to make it right, and audits and such. So unless there's a very strong team driving the development of a Golang based client and they have experience deploying onto other blockchains. If we don't find such team, I don't think we should risk going for a Golang implementation. Better invest the resources into building more SDKs and wallet APIs so that users can integrate with the reference clients.
I think having more resiliency in the network would be beneficial, but I think it would definitely be there would have to be a serious discussion along the lines of what Addy is talking about, ensuring that the team that is going to be doing it is properly resourced and will be able to handle that to the same degree, support wise and everything else that the ECC and ZF do with our current implementations.
And I guess I'm last. For me, no, I wouldn't want to see another implementation. I think we've seen Ethereum as a great example of how having a lot of clients in a bunch of different languages isn't always a great solution to the problem. Even if they're consensus compatible, every hard fork that comes is a large ordeal. I think resources could be better spent at building on top of the nodes that are already there. Having it in a different language doesn't add that much benefit to me.
I personally really like the idea in theory and actually disagree on the Ethereum side of things, especially because if we're discussing Ethereum specifically, which is moving to a Byzantine fault tolerance system with Ethereum 2.0, let's say one node client is invalid out of 4 of them. Assuming equal distribution, 25% of the network will fail, but the other 75% will continue, which is enough to maintain consensus. Right now, if someone finds a bug in Zcash D, the entire chain will fail because that's what 51% of miners are on. And obviously, it's a monumental effort to get 3 to 4 different node softwares together. And I think at that point, it becomes a budgetary concern where ZOMG has some money. It does not have that much money.
Yeah.
And to that regard, I think the discussion about wallet software is actually a great point. Not wallet software, but SDKs in different languages. Because even if we just build out a Go SDK, suddenly we're having transaction creation, transaction parsing, serialization, signing, and all the stuff that's kind of the building blocks, the type infrastructure, the definitions that if someone did want to expand into a node, that's kind of where they start with. I also think that since Zcash is still Bitcoin based, we would actually have an advantage for something like Go because there is a very prominent Bitcoin Go daemon, which could probably be modified and just outsourced to Rust for the advanced cryptography. So yeah, I think there could be some progress there. I'd be interested to see a grant proposal for it. I do think it becomes budgetary. But my final comment here is I really like the idea in general because it guarantees the documented consensus protocol is correct. Right now, we can say Zcash follows it, but there's no other node agreeing or disagreeing. And I'm not trying to say it isn't reviewed and isn't tested. I'm just saying that when you only have one implementation in use, the implementation becomes the definition instead of vice versa.
Yeah, this is actually a problem we're seeing on coming down the line with the Zebra implementation being derived from Bitcoin. There are effectively undocumented consensus rules, or we fear that there are undocumented consensus rules that may trip us up. But hopefully we're going to find out during Q1 of next year. Any other questions from any of the candidates that they want to raise? If there isn't, I'm going to move on to give the candidates another opportunity to speak and to make some closing remarks. And let's start off with Wobbs.
Thanks, everyone. Like I said, in the beginning, I'm thankful that everyone is here participating and asking questions. That shows that you are supportive of Zcash. And I think, like I said, I think that Zcash is uniquely positioned to be to provide privacy in this ecosystem, and it is fundamentally important. I don't really have any other closing remarks beside that, but I'm excited, if elected, to work with any of the candidates that we have running for election this year. And I wish everyone a happy holidays and happy New Year.
Let's hear from Luke next.
I think it's been a great call. I'm really impressed by my fellow candidates and wish them the best. I don't really have much to say here. Could say something cheesy, but no, I hope I've convinced you that I'm worthy of being voted for, and I look forward to the new year and the new board, no matter who may be on it. And I'll echo what was previously said and say happy holidays.
Cody?
Yeah, just want to thank everyone, all the panelists. It's been a really great discussion. Yeah, whoever gets elected, it'll be a great new year. So I look forward to seeing what happens with the panel, whether I'm on it or whether it's being going with other people. So thanks for having me.
And finally, Adi.
And thanks to everyone for joining the call. Just a last remark that we have the candidate pool now that is halved from the last year. And I still think that we have a bunch of strong candidates who want the best for Zcash, especially since ZEC is yet to prove that it is easy to build upon. So, we need SDKs and APIs to attract developers to implement private money in their apps. And if I am elected, I will work with the panel to attract builders, to build the necessary tools, and to spread Zcash adoption.
Cool. Well, thank you all for joining. Thank you to all the attendees who've been listening, to everybody who posted questions on the forum, to everybody who's been participating here in the chat. I'm sorry that we didn't get to all the questions. I think maybe we can continue some of those on the forums. In terms of next steps, we will be opening the poll of the ZCAP next week, and that will then run until the end of the year. We will then know straight away who are the new members of the committee, and we will be looking to get them assembled and get things moving as early as possible in the new year. There'll be a little bit of sort of paperwork in terms of KYC and the conflict of interest questionnaire that we're going to get people to fill out. But then we'll be looking to move on very, very quickly with presenting you with, as has been mentioned, the KEDIT grant is out there waiting for assessment. I'm personally very, very excited about that. I think KEDIT coming in would be coming into this ecosystem would be really, really great. But yeah, as others have said, happy holidays, and we look forward to meeting at least some of you very, very early in the new year.